Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So some of you may have read about this leak that is going on aboard the ISS. It's in the Russian module, and apparently we've known about this leak for a few years, and a recent meeting between NASA and Roscosmos to discuss what should be done about this leak maybe didn't go super well. And NASA is concerned because they believe that the leak could lead to a catastrophic failure on the part of the Russian module. So let's get into the details of where this leak is exactly, what happened in this meeting, and what the options even are to fix a leak aboard the ISS. So the major concern has been a small but persistent leak in a vestibule of the Zvezda service module called PRK that separates a docking port from the rest of the module. The leak was first detected in 2019, and station crews have dealt with the leak by sealing off PRK from the rest of the station when they don't need access to its docking port. And I was going to show you guys like a fancy map of where exactly this service module is, but I found this guy's map on Twitter that was so hilariously simple that I decided I'm going to use it. His name is Ian Bennikin, and he's getting his master's in aerospace engineering at the University of Stuttgart. And this is the map he drew to explain to everyone on Twitter where the leak is and where they've sealed it off. And I'm like, yeah, great. Very simple, Ian. I appreciate you. But basically, the leak is in a transfer tunnel that separates the docking port from the rest of the module. So it seems like everyone agrees that there is a leak, but NASA and Roscosmos seem to disagree on the cause and the severity of the leak. And that disagreement was brought to light during a brief meeting of NASA's ISS Advisory Committee on November 13th, 2024. During this meeting, another meeting was recounted of the committee with its Roscosmos counterpart in Moscow in September to discuss issues with the station. ISS Advisory Committee Chair Bob Cabana said Roscosmos does not believe catastrophic disintegration of the PRK module is realistic, and NASA has expressed concerns about the structural integrity of PRK and the possibility of a catastrophic failure. And there was a temporary increase in the leak rate earlier this year that was patched up, but despite that, NASA has emphasized that the ISS crew is in no immediate danger. Nevertheless, NASA's Office of the Inspector General called the leak the top safety risk to the ISS in a NASA audit published on September 26, 2024. And look, there are parts of the ISS that date back to 1998. And like any aging complex, maintenance and issues like this to an extent are to be expected. Bob Cabana said that troubleshooting on this matter is ongoing. But he also said that the problem is that NASA and Roscosmos don't have a common understanding on what the likely root causes are or the severity of the consequences for these leaks. Cabana said that the Russian position is that the most probable cause of the cracks is high cycling, caused by micro vibrations. This refers to the flexing of metal and similar components that heat and cool as the ISS orbits in and out of sunlight. Cabana says that NASA believes that the cause of the PRK cracks are likely multi-causal, including pressure and mechanical stress, residual stress, material properties, and environmental exposures. And apart from the causes, NASA and Russia also disagree on whether or not continued operations are safe. And basically, the only thing that they do agree on is that for now, the remedy is to keep the hatch closed between the US and the Russian side as investigations continue. Cabana said that the two agencies will continue meeting to seek common understanding of the structural integrity, but he did not provide a timeline. Cabana said at the committee meeting that while the Russian team continues to search for and seal the leaks, it does not believe catastrophic disintegration of the PRK is realistic. And all of this is particularly interesting because NASA and Roscosmos are the principal partners in the ISS, and they continue to collaborate on the ISS for both policy and technical reasons. And by technical, I mean that the ISS can't be like broken apart. They can't be like, I disagree, so I'm taking my part of the space station and going over here. They need each other, at least for a few more years. Russia plans to leave the ISS as soon as 2028, while the other international partners have committed to being there till 2030. So on a September 27th, 2024 briefing, NASA officials downplayed the serious concerns about the leaks, but they admitted that the leak rate had grown to its highest rate earlier this year, a rate of 1.7 kilograms of air per day. At that briefing, agency officials said that recent repair work had reduced that leak rate by a third. And listen, nobody's loving this leak business, right? Like, leaky space station is pretty unnerving for everyone, and especially for the space station crews. At a November 8th briefing, Michael Barrett, one of the recently returned Crew 8 NASA astronauts who recently spent 8 months at the station, said his Russian counterparts have been very open about the issue, but that NASA takes precautions when the hatch to PRK is open.
We've taken a very conservative approach to close a hatch between the U.S. side and the Russian side during those time periods. It's not a comfortable thing, but it is the best agreement between all the smart people on both sides, and it's something that we as a crew live with and enact, and we've actually made it, I wouldn't say normalized necessarily, but it's something that we accept and we perform as we are directed by both sides.
And to some scientists and experts, a spacecraft that is leaking is not that surprising. And for something as big as the ISS, leaks are kind of expected. David Klaus, an aerospace engineering professor at the University of Colorado Boulder, says all spacecraft leak. The space station is just the most high-profile spacecraft there is, and it's leaking more now than it used to. And Michael Kazarian, an adjunct professor of astronautical engineering at the University of Southern California, said, "It's indeed leaking more, but still not all that much." He says the current leak is bigger than a pinhole, maybe 2 pinholes. You're talking about something relatively small. And something that Cabana said kind of simplifies this whole back and forth in my mind. He said that the Russians believe that continued operations are safe, but they can't prove to our satisfaction that they are. And the US believes that they are not safe, but they can't prove to the Russian satisfaction that that's the case. It's one of these. Cabana said that NASA and Roscosmos committees made a joint recommendation to their agency's leaders to bring in outside experts from academia and industry to help support a plan moving forward. He offered no timetable for those efforts, but NASA has already brought in an independent team to help them assess the leaks. Cabana said this is an engineering problem, and good engineers should be able to reach a solution and agree on it. Michael Kazarian said, "We know that the space station cannot be up there forever. It's a little bit easier with an old house to paint and replace components that fail. Home repair on a space outpost is both more expensive and more finicky, and at some point, entropy will win out." NASA's just crossing its fingers that that's not going to happen in this decade, as its plan is to keep the space station operational until 2030. But the leak challenges give additional urgency to a concern that the Aerospace Safety Advisory Panel has been raising for years, that the Orbital laboratory could fail before it can be safely destroyed. Earlier this year, NASA commissioned SpaceX to develop a vehicle to safely deorbit the space station in 2031, targeting a 2029 launch. And that's a pretty tight timeline for a project of that scale, so it's kind of a race against the clock. As sad as it is, the ISS will have to be retired, and deorbiting it in a controlled way is very important. So I think the leaks just kind of remind us all of the urgency of that. And how they are even fixing these leaks is kind of crazy. Now, a lot of it depends on where the leak is and how big it is. For example, in 2018, Russian cosmonaut Sergei Prokopyev used a small piece of medical gauze soaked in epoxy, a type of resin used as a sealant, to fix a tiny leak aboard the space station. And famously, the Apollo 13 astronauts used duct tape to build a filtration system to help keep their carbon dioxide levels down when they lost an oxygen tank. But the ISS does have these patch kits that they use to fix leaks depending on the location and size. In general, the patch has an O-ring to create an initial seal, and then adhesive can be injected to make the seal permanent. So it's not like it's something that they are unprepared to handle. It's just a question really of quickly finding these leaks and making sure that they are not going to lead to a much bigger problem. So this is a tough one. I kind of feel like NASA's sort of trying to have its cake and eat it too. There's a lot of top safety risk talk, but then also kind of downplaying it in their own briefings and saying that the astronauts aren't in any immediate risk. And the word risk is a complicated one when it comes to space. I get that. And you don't want to cause any panic or exaggerate what is going on, but I do find their messaging on this issue to be a little confusing. But what do you guys think? Do you think these leaks are something to be concerned about, or do you think this is just the byproduct of a 25-year-old station getting ever closer to retirement? Let me know what you think in the comments below. Okay, that's it for now. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, I will see you in the next video.